Hello and welcome to yet another wonderful and exciting episode of the Sweet Tea Shakespeare podcast. I have three superstars straight from the Raleigh production of Richard III that I'm very I just realized in the last episode that I've been saying super excited a lot, and I'm really trying to combat that, but I mean there's no other way to explain it. So I want to open up and I want to show you guys my shirt, which is, I like to start the episodes like super chaotic and insane and no context and confusing as possible. So I'm gonna start by showing my
That's on brand.
my shirt. Leg so hot, hot, hot. Leg hot, so hot you fry an egg. And I want to go around the table. I want to do David, Jessica, and then Miranda. Introduce yourselves and who you played, and if you would, if had the opportunity, if you would fry an egg on your leg, if that was possible.
Okay.
Hi. Yeah. So I'm David Henderson. I played Richard, and you know, I am so I'm almost blue. I am Scottish. So if I go out in the sun, I go from white to unbelievably red very quickly. So it is possible that I could cook an egg on my thigh if I did that. So, you know, if survival depended on it, think twice. Why not fry an egg on my leg?
That's impressive actually. I'm kind of jealous actually.
Don't be. It's terrible. I don't like the sun. That's why I don't fun. You know, I've been too much in the sun. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm Jessica Johnson. I played Lady Anne, and I wish my legs were hot enough to fry an egg on. I might have to make that like a goal. Absolutely. If my legs met the requisite hotness, I would fry the eggs.
Excellent.
I have a shirt on from the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Okay, represent.
There's not a lot of egg frying in Scotland. It's very, like David said, they're kind of sun phobic there.
Yeah, right.
I'm Miranda. I played Lady Elizabeth or Queen Elizabeth, and I'm wondering, like, does the leg stay hot all the time, or do I have the choice to turn the temperature up and down? Because if it stayed hot all the time, no, I would not want to fry an egg on my leg. But if it were something that I could control, yeah, why not? Portable griddle.
That's very interesting. I never thought of that because when I was like, I'm wearing this insane shirt today. Maybe I should just like keep it in the shadows. And then I'm like, no, I'm gonna start the episode like this. And I'm like, how am I gonna incorporate this into an episode about Richard? And I'm like, well, maybe we could just throw a little hypothetical. Is it going to be like a superpower or something? And I'm so glad you brought this because this is an actual, like, this was a bit. This was a little joke that I thought of. And now this is an actual talking point of the episode. So that's super awesome. I think this is the artist's imagination and your power. So if you want it to be like adjustable heat, 100%, absolutely. Okay. Or if like there's also like the flip side that I like that David was talking about, where it's like a condition. You can't help it. If you get hot legs every time you step outside, every time you see the sun, it's a reaction. And, maybe you were able to find some benefit from it, throw an egg on there, and boom, you get some breakfast. I'm sorry, this is,
I just want to know where I'm getting the egg. Like, am I carrying a chicken with me around, like if I got my chicken on a leash everywhere.
We are
what have you got? That's my lunchbox. It's my chicken,
We are way in too deep at the start of the Sweet Tea Shakespeare podcast. A little housekeeping for you guys. We are troubleshooting the first couple video episodes. I promised you guys at the time of the recording, it's yesterday, so Monday. I promised you guys an episode Monday with the Hamlet cast, and my Wi-Fi and the episode does not want to upload. So I'm doing that as soon as possible. I think the best thing is going to be audio only through all your platforms, and then video on YouTube. That's what I'm thinking the best thing is going to be. And so I'm troubleshooting that, and I'm getting that up as soon as possible. Granted, by the time you see this episode, it'll probably be up already, so I'm just wasting my time. But we are trying to go video and audio to accommodate everyone's podcast viewing or listening preferences. So bear with us as we try to incorporate audio and video listeners at the same time. We are still shooting for twice a month, once a week. And we're going to also start including ads and sponsorships. And we're
Nice.
very, there it goes again. Here I go again with the very excited. Gosh, I need another word. Can someone give me another word except excited?
Stoked.
Elated.
Stoked.
Elated.
Stoked. Okay, cool. I love it.
Jocund.
Bear with me, guys. Okay, that's good. I love them. I love them all. Bear with me as I try to extend my vocabulary. But yeah, so we're gonna start incorporating our lovely sponsors. And I'll get to that, and I'll break you guys off and at some point in the episode where we have a good stopping point. And yeah, we have Hamlet. We just finished off Richard. And we're gonna be talking about that today. We have Hamlet coming up early November, the 4th through the 6th at the Downtown Market. And then just underway right behind that is going to be our Christmas cantata, Behold, and No Lit Sherlock, both going down in Fayetteville. And very stoked about both of those. Not sure when this episode is going to be coming out, but in case it isn't, auditions for both 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and No Lit Sherlock are going to be held the 24th at the Capitol Encore Academy. You can email me. I'll try to provide emails and contact information for auditions about that. For me and Tracy, who's going to be directing both of those. And yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about Richard III. And I'm going to start this one again with a round robin. Every other question will probably be open for grabs, depending on, the Zoom connectivity and all that jazz. But I'm going to start with David, and then we'll open the floor talking about the story, the plot of Richard III through your character's perspective. And of course, this is going to be easy for Richard because he is the Richard.
It's fun. Like I'll say that I didn't realize I would fall in love with Richard as much as I did, but Richard is opportunistic, right? Richard sees an opportunity to achieve something, which is the crown of England. And in order to achieve that crown, he has to very strategically remove all of the obstacles that are in his way, which at the point we start to play is roughly 6 people, not just adults, also children. So what we get to do throughout the course of the play is we get to see Richard work his magic, if you will. One of my favorite lines in the show is when Margaret calls him Hell's Black Intelligencer, right? It's like, that's a great description of somebody, but he's able to move through court in such a way that he can convince people to do certain things for him. And if you think about it, Richard never actually kills anyone in the show. He's responsible for all of the deaths, but he basically outsources it. So from my perspective, it is an opportunity for a person, Richard, to use what gifts he has, which are his intelligence and his ability to communicate with people, because what he may lack in physical beauty and physical prowess, he makes up for in his ability to spin words and talk, and he uses that to strategically move chess pieces around so that by the time he finally becomes king, he's king, right? He sits in the throne. The problem is, be careful what you wish for, is that Richard runs into a wall of basically 4 women in the play: his mother, Elizabeth, Margaret, and Anne, who to a certain degree stop him. There's one of my favorite moments in the show is the scene with the mom, with the Duchess, because she basically says, "You're a disappointment." She lays into him in a way, and is in our production specifically is one of the few people that is able to put Richard in his place. And after that, I compare it to Scarface with Al Pacino. If you've ever seen that, he gets everything he wants, and then there's that moment where he's completely paranoid. Like, A, he's done a lot of cocaine, but B, everybody at that point, everybody's out for him. So when you kill 6 people, you've killed somebody that that Miranda, Elizabeth cares about. So people that care about Elizabeth are going to make sure they get you. You've killed Anne, so people who cared about Anne are going to take care of you. So your head's on a constant swivel. It's very much the Scottish play too, in that moment where Mackers becomes paranoid. So that's a very long way to say it's a play about political machinations inside of a family. How's that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So so from Elizabeth's perspective, it's kind of she starts. So a little bit of background on her is she was married before the play started to the Grey family, the Woodville family. And so when her former husband passes away, she and King Edward get married, and there's a lot of mixed feelings about that. There's people who think, oh, it's so wonderful they married for love, but there's also people who are frustrated that he did not marry someone who was higher up, who was more royal than she was. So we start the play, and there's already that background of dissension kind of for Elizabeth. And then that just kind of lingers over their heads. So she and Edward IV kind of know that there's going to be a power grab if he passes away before her. And kind of all of the worst things that could possibly happen come true in this play for Elizabeth. Everything that she dreads from the beginning of the play, where she enters in the beginning saying, "If he were dead, what would betide on me?" All of the bad things do betide on her. She loses her children, two of her children. Another one flees. He's not in the production that we did, but Dorset flees. And then Richard tries to marry her oldest daughter, Elizabeth, who he's not successful with. She does kind of stand up to Richard at the end of the play, and marries her off to the new king, Richmond. But yeah, she's pretty unlucky in this play, except for in the end, she still remains Queen Mother. So yeah.
So what is the play about from Anne's perspective? One of the things that I found that I was very excited about, that was really a wonderful part of this process for me, was how much I got to learn about the history of the Plantagenets, because Richard III comes at the very end. Well, not at the very end. It's Shakespeare wrote 10 history plays that covered the history of the Plantagenet family up to having the Tudor family be the final family that takes over the crown that takes over the ruling of England. And man, those Plantagenets, they were wild and for like a long time. And there is so much background that happens up to that. So Richard III, in the chronology of the histories, is the seventh, basically the eighth event that happens. So there's like a whole bunch of other stuff that has happened to get the characters in the play to where they are. And some of them have been in other plays. Shakespeare had written them into other plays, and some of them hadn't. So Anne Neville, who was the character that I played, she had a whole, in real life, she was very historically involved in the battle for the crown. But in Shakespeare's canon, she only appears in Richard III. So I got to find out so much about who she was as a person, and then how those parts of her story were very strategically incorporated into the play for Shakespeare's purposes. But I think for her, she was the youngest daughter of the Earl of Warwick, who was very significantly involved in the grab for the crown that Miranda talked about with Henry IV, or I'm sorry, Edward IV. God, so here's the other thing, like there's only like, apparently there were only like 5 names that men could have in the Middle Ages if they lived in England. And so everybody had the same name, which was nice and confusing. But Anne is really like David said, it's a story about political machinations within a family. And she was very much a pawn in those political machinations in the Plantagenet family. And also within her own family and her father, specifically his desire to be elevated in the ranks of English nobility. So she was actually married to she was at one point supposed to be Queen of England, and then her husband and father-in-law were killed by Richard and his brothers, and then she ends up becoming Richard's wife. So at one point she is Queen of England and then not Queen of, so she has this whole like situation, or her whole story is about how she gets to, for me, how she gets to enact any sort of autonomy within the role she is required to play within those political machinations within the family. And she has to do that all in like 2 scenes, right? She's got like basically two scenes, one at the very beginning of Act 1, one at the very beginning of what was our Act 2, and then she's a ghost at the end. So to figure out how to make it so that she had a connection, like there was a connection for her throughout the story, for Richard and for Miranda, or for Elizabeth and for all the other characters within what Shakespeare has allowed her to do, and then what the decisions that we made within our production. So I think it's a multi-layered and complicated answer. What is her role? What is the story about? And what is the story about for her? But one of the very great joys of my experience was getting to develop that with David and with Miranda and with the ensemble, and figuring out deciding what we were going to show in our production, which was just amazing. So
yeah.
Yeah.
This is some great answers from all 3 of you. Before I move on to the next question, I want to give a little shout out, audio listeners. You're not going to be able to witness this pure joy that I'm seeing right now, but me and David are actually in the same place, believe it or not. We are actually like right beside each other. We're both on the stage. We're both in Shakespeare's Globe live recording from it. And it looks like Jessica's in a castle.
I'm in the real Globe.
Oh, nice. So yeah, I just wanted to shout that out while I had the opportunity earlier.
Miranda's in her bedroom.
Miranda's in her bedroom.
I like the blue, Miranda. My bedroom is that color.
It's a lovely color.
When I was 11.
I love it. My bedroom is that color.
One would say it's just as magical as the castle that Jessica's in. So
absolutely.
There you go. But yeah. So the next question I want to talk about is the mental health of it all, because Richard III, if you don't know the show and now you do, this is your first exposure to it. This is a very dense and can be very dark show. Of course, there are lovely moments of humor sprinkled throughout the show, but the overall, when you tell like the story of Richard III, it is dense and it is dark, and it is obviously a drama. So I want to go around same as before, where I'm gonna start with David, and we can do Miranda and then Jessica after, just to keep the same formalities of it all. No one's jumping on each other, but I want you guys to tell me a little bit about like the mental health process, because as you know, this, if you're not familiar, audience listeners, if you're not familiar with like an actor's perspective of getting into a role and enveloping the role. I mean, just take the Hollywood, for example. We all know with the Heath Ledger stuff. We all know with other actors in the past who can be completely consumed by a role. And sometimes it's very good thing if it, I mean, there are benefits to it, but when it comes to someone that can be so evil and so dark and carries this burden inside their head, it can take a serious toll on the actor themselves. And so I want to ask you guys, like, how was that process? Like, was it too much? Were you guys able to check in on with yourselves and take care of yourself in that way? Because it can be a very scary experience for some people.
That's a great question. And I think one of the things that's really important now, and I mean, in the last several years, the rise of intimacy coordination has really helped actors because it started to give a vocabulary and a vocabulary to things that we had experienced in a room before, but we're now able to talk to them. And I think that right there is being able to have those conversations, not just with your scene partner, but with the director and the ensemble as a whole, really goes a long way to doing that. I think for me, it comes back to something one of my acting teachers told me years ago, is that acting is therapeutic. It's not therapy. And what that does is it allows me to go in and live in this world, in this moment, from the time I break the stage and then and leave it on the stage when I leave. Now, that doesn't mean there's not the physical exhaustion that comes from doing a 2.5-hour play or whatever, but what happens within that wooden O, if you will, is literally left in that wooden O. And one of the things I think that all three of us on this call did before the show was we did a yoga. We did a yoga warm up, and I think that helped us kind of center ourselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, however you want to say it, to go and do the show, but at the same time kind of cleanse our body of whatever residual trauma that the show could hold. When I was years ago, when Pulp Fiction came out, Judson, you were probably not even alive when it came out. A friend of mine said, "Oh my God, it's the most violent film I've ever seen." And I saw it, and I did not think it was violent. I thought it had a tone of violence to it. And now is there violence in it? Yes. But was it the most violent thing I'd ever seen? No. But there was a tone of violence. And I think that's what makes this show so amazing, is especially the way we chose to stage it, right? Is we did not show death on stage. Things happened in the dark, or they happened in a heightened way that suggested Richard dies or Hastings' head was removed, but you don't actually see it. You know, the old Greek thing is that the terror is greater if the audience doesn't see it. That helped us, I think, to a great degree, but it allowed the play to have that violent feeling like Pulp Fiction, but we didn't have to see it, when we shoot Marvin in the head in the back of the car. And I think that helped me as an actor. And I will say the whole ensemble was a huge help to everybody, because as much as we, played hard and yelled and stuff and screamed and stomped and stuff on stage, off stage, we laughed a lot. You know what I mean? It's like we were not afraid to come off stage and laugh and be together as a unit, knowing we are all in this together. Again, that foundation gets set in the intimacy direction and all of that. And intimacy is interesting because this show doesn't really have a lot of intimacy as you would think about it, right? But what it allowed us to do is it allowed Miranda and I to feel comfortable with each other in our scene. Jessica and I to feel comfortable in our scene. Aaron and I, when I was pawing all over Aaron, it allowed, all of that. But it created a vocabulary, it created a boundary that we all could voice up as like, man, I'm having a bad night or whatever. So that's my answer.
Yeah, and before the next person comes on, I just want to give a little shout out, like piggybacking off that answer. Like, yeah, sometimes the best way to tell a story is to leave the audience up to fill in the blanks with their imagination, and that goes for movies too, like you were saying with Pulp Fiction. Like, and it's a choice. It's not that it's just we can't afford the budget to actually have someone, but it's a legit choice, and it moves twice as effective if done right. And I think in this production that it was done right. All right, I'll shut up now.
No. So I agree with David. I think that having an intimacy coordinator, we had Lily Mills come in to do our intimacy work with us, and she did an amazing job. I think that really helps to separate some of the suggestive nature, and kind of, there's a scene in the play where it's a little bit of harassment on Richard's part. So it helps to have choreography when it comes to those kind of challenging physical scenes. Now, when it comes to emotional scenes, I was actually talking to Renee Wimberly, who plays the Duchess, about this at one of our last performances. But Elizabeth goes through a lot of different emotions in the play. She starts off relatively haughty, kind of elevated, yeah, not haughty, like, but like prim and proper, and very kind of full of herself. And then from there, she goes right to, I mean, one of the next scenes is her husband passes away. And so she has a little bit of grief there. And then from there, it escalates to the death of her children, and then utter rage at Richard for having killed her children, or ordered the death of her children. And so there's a lot of having to tap into certain emotions that I have experienced. I have not personally experienced the loss of children as a mother, and so there's a certain amount of imagination that has to go on there. But for the most part, like David said, we kind of tap in and tap out of these scenes, and it's important to kind of keep it separate in your mind. I can't obviously go off stage and still be grieving the loss of 2 imaginary children, but it's definitely important to check in with yourself, check in with other actors, and make sure, you know, you're not carrying anything home with you. You're kind of compartmentalizing on a certain level. So, yeah.
I believe it is vital as an actor to have not only your own process that you apply to the art of telling the story, but also how you are taking care of how you are living in the reality of being an artist who tells a story, right? And so I think we actually had these conversations quite a bit backstage about taking things that you've learned that are formal methods that other people have developed, and taking things that work for you from those methods and putting them into your own process. One of the things that I think was really significant for me for every show that I'm in, it's sort of a constant refining of my process as an actor for the work, and also respond to that work as a person who is the artist. One of the things that Lily said that I think was really significant for me was that there are you can give yourself permission to find those checkpoints within yourself where you know you have crossed the boundary between being healthily representing this person's story and using what you've experienced to tell that story, and then allowing your imagination to take over so you don't have to live in that space all the time, like Miranda said. And she said it so significantly. She said, if you ever encounter a situation where the director tells you to do something and your immediate response is, well, I wouldn't do that because my character wouldn't do that, that's when you know you've crossed the boundary between healthy character representation and something that you're not ready to express therapeutically yet, because it's more of a therapy issue, like David said. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that, and it was kind of a touch point that I was really able to incorporate this time around for managing my own mental health. And for me, it was really interesting experience, because I came to do the show as an out of state contractor. So I came from I am not local to North Carolina, and I was away from my husband and children for 6 weeks. So so there was a lot that I had to make sure that I was sort of conscious of not bringing into the space, because it would be good for me as a person to work through, but it wouldn't be good for the story as a whole. If that makes sense. So
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. I appreciate that. And I really love like how we're now in a more familiar place with mental health and awareness of it all, like how we're just
Mhm.
we're slowly maybe turtle pace, but we're working our way towards awareness and exposure and consideration, like you were saying earlier with the we have intimacy coordinators and people checking in on that kind of stuff, you know, and it's not just well they're actors, that's they get paid to do that, it's an actual considerable thing. And so um I want to take this quick moment to give a quick shout out to the supporters and the people sponsoring this episode. So, meaning that this podcast is supported by a grant from the Arts Council of Fayetteville / Cumberland County, the North Carolina Arts Council, and in part by contributions from the city of Fayetteville, Cumberland County, and other community partners. There's a bunch of other wonderful and lovely sponsors that I advise you to check out. I'll share links in the description below. Oh man, I feel like a YouTuber now. Oh no, we're reverting back. But yeah, there's some wonderful, lovely people that are making this podcast happen that I'm able to gather here today and talk to these absolutely delightful people today about Shakespeare, Richard III, and leg egg. You know what I mean? So I want to open up
All of it.
I keep forgetting that actually happened. That happened this episode. We're here getting the nitty gritty of mental health
So
and
many
some dark stuff. And then I remember that I started this episode with some leg egg. Absolutely delightful.
You don't even remember. You're too young to remember when legs pantyhose used to come in an egg.
in eggs.
In an egg.
That's right.
They were a round little bottom with an egg top.
Yeah.
Mhm. It was
So-
spelled L''EGGS.
Oh my God.
Legs.
This is actually I'm wearing this shirt just as a little joke and just, you know, as my little comfy clothes, and little to know it's a reference. Only 90s kids remembers this. So
David, you're a 90s kid.
wow. I'll have you guys know.
Far from it, boys and girls.
I'll have you guys know that I will die on this hill that I was born in 1999. So I am just barely scraping the surface. October of 1999, might I add.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just barely scraping the surface, and my fiance is very mad at me every time I bring it up, and I'm like, I'm 90s kid, but I will die on this hill, and I was raised as a 90s kid, so I'll have the title. Thank you very much. Next question. So I want to bring up the conversation, bring up the energy a little lighter, because we were getting into the you know what I mean. So I want to ask you guys what would be like a potential bucket list or like a kind of dream, and not like a dream production or a dream character that you'd like to play, because I've been talking a lot about that with episodes, but there's got to be a specific niche thing that an actor has always wanted to do. For me personally, I talked about it with Wade's episode. I've never died in a production, and I really want to be able to die in a production. Like, no, like all seriousness, I've never had that opportunity. And it's got to be on stage too. It can't be a little cop out. Off stage, right?
Yeah.
So same format before. Give you guys a second to think about what specific thing you want to experience, whether it's like I want to play another gender, I want to play, you know, whatever that might be, just something that you've always wanted to tackle that you've never had the chance to quite yet.
Start with Jessica so that I can think longer, because I know Jessica's got an answer.
So fun story. So David and I, what was it, like the first or second rehearsal that we had, he was like, so what's a role you've always wanted to play? Tell me all your bucket list roles. What have you always wanted to do in Shakespeare? And I was like, I mean, I can't give you a simple answer for that. Like, can I tell you like what my next thing I want to do in comedy versus history versus romance versus tragedy? I will say a piece of that my brilliant mother gave to me after seeing this show was that she was like, God, you're so beautiful on stage and so good at playing these like lovely tragic characters. I would love to see you just go off the rails, ugly, crazy, like a character where the character doesn't have to be pretty, so you don't have to worry about representing that kind of visual beauty, right? And it got me thinking, and I was actually were you, I don't know if you were in the room, if y'all two were in the room, but Sean Snyder, who played he was brilliant in that he got to play a whole bunch of different people that Richard set up in his mental composition for the show. And then he played Richmond, the Earl of Richmond, who is finally Richard's conqueror. I was like, I feel like I really want to just Caliban, right? Or Hecate, or all the witches in the Scottish play that are just yeah, I don't know. But something that's just over the top, crazy, silly, ugly, I guess is the way to say it.
I totally feel you, because
yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I played one of the Wickersham brothers in Seussical the musical.
Yes.
And that's a bad guy. It's a little silly bad guy. I played a monk,
Right.
And we performed that for school shows, and there is no other joy compared to playing a bad guy and just outright being evil, and then having children watch that. And then you do the little meet and greet outside on their way back to the school bus, and they're booing you.
Yes.
Oh, that's incredible moment.
Yes.
That's how you know an actor did their job well done, playing a little cartoon monkey on stage in a musical. So I'll pass it over to Miranda and then David, but I just wanted to shout that out. 10 out of 10 would recommend, off the rails.
10 out of 10. I'd love to play Gertrude in that show.
Good.
Funny you should mention that. I was also in a high school touring production of There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom, and I played the really obnoxious, loud kid. And some girl came up to me after the show and said, "I want you to come home with me and be my sister." And she was serious.
Oh.
And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't. But it was very cute. So children's theater is very rewarding as well. But I am going to go the opposite direction. I am always cast as the annoying, or the loud, or the kind of kooky sidekick, the little sister. And that's kind of what I am good at. I'm very good at playing that role. I kind of fit into that role earlier this year with Emma. I played kind of the wide-eyed ingenue of that. And I would love to someday tackle being a romantic lead. I think that would be a good challenge for me, especially as someone who would like to kind of work more with intimacy directors as well. I think something like that would be a good challenge for me. Definitely a challenge, but definitely something fun and something that I haven't experienced yet so far. So,
yay!
I still don't have an answer.
Right.
And here's why. Is that so? I don't know. I really don't know. I have been really lucky in all my time as an actor. I've done a lot of crazy stuff on stage. I've been naked on stage. I've done musicals. I've smoked pot on stage. Not real pot, it was catnip. But I've done all these things. I've been killed. I've killed. And there are a lot of things. And I think really, to be honest, if I had to say what appeals to me most and things that I really like to do, is I like to be in a room with people who are all committed to telling the same story and all are working towards that end with as little ego as possible, and really understanding that theater is truly a collaborative process. And I think that's the thing that makes it magic for me. So Miranda, I'm not a romantic lead. I'm not the guy that's going to play the romantic lead. If I play the romantic lead, it's because the romantic lead is some guy who's this short, kind of weird dude who's just, that's what he is, right? It's but I like the journey, whatever it is, as long as the people that are on the journey with us and directing that journey are up for the detours, right? That's the beautiful thing, is when you start a show, you've got a map and it's called the script, but as you're in the rehearsal room, you want scene partners and designers and collaborators with you to, if you decide to take a left turn to look at the world's largest ball of twine, they're going to go with you. and it might work and it might not, but you might discover things. And I think that's ultimately, every time I go into a room, that's what I want to figure out. And there was stuff that I was still figuring out, you know, 2 days, 3 days before we opened, and stuff that was coming to me in the final show that I was like, oh shit, oh sorry for me, I didn't know I was doing that. Like, I didn't know that. Like, and that's a weird thing as an actor too, is to have somebody who watches the show say something to you about something you do on stage, and you're not aware that you do it. Like, it just happens, and somebody goes, when you did X, and I go, oh, and then I become self-conscious about doing X.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? So my answer is just, I want to keep doing the best work I can with the best people I can. So
yeah.
Good. I love it. I love all the answers. Absolutely. And just from that little round, I've learned that now I want to play the romantic lead, be naked on stage, and smoke catnip on stage too.
It's the best.
All three
Smoking
combined.
do it all
Play.
at one time.
I'm so
being
jealous
naked on
now.
stage is highly overrated.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
not.
man.
No, there's nothing great about it. I did a show called Annapurna, which is one of my all-time favorite shows I've ever done. And the show starts with me wearing nothing but an apron, and it's not even a full apron; it's a waist apron, with my back to the audience, my bare butt hanging out, frying sausage. And the last thing anyone should do is fry sausage in the nude. So
that's quite the opener.
if you haven't read that show, read it. It's
I saw
amazing.
that show
Do you
many
actually
moons ago.
Did you really? You
I
saw
did.
that
It was
show.
wonderful. I still remember it. Not your
It's one
butt,
of my
but
favorite. Yeah, thank you.
Traumatized.
My father-in-law remembers that, so that's all I hear about from him.
You didn't actually have to fry sausage on stage, did you?
Oh, we had a working stove. We would start it off stage so that when I came on, it was already sizzling. So that we cooked the sausage for most of the pre-show, so the theater smelled like cooking sausage.
That's actually incredible.
That's dedication.
It's a blast.
Please,
but I
tell
think
me
that's what we need to do, right? Artists, our goal as artists is to, God, let me borrow from Hamlet, the player king, hold the mirror up to nature, right? That's what we try to do, and I think we achieved that in a lot of ways. Richard, in a very simplistic way, right? We were able to hold the mirror up to human nature, truly human nature, like the interpersonal relationship between men and women. Like, Miranda was talking about the journey that Elizabeth has, and Elizabeth goes toe to toe with Richard better than anybody. Like, the scene with Miranda and the scene with Jessica are parallel scenes. Richard is the same tactic on Elizabeth that he tries on Anne, but Elizabeth ain't buying it. But I'm also not wooing Elizabeth over the corpse of her father-in-law. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, you are wooing her over the corpse of her, the corpse.
Correct.
Of her
Yes.
children.
The children are dead. There is that hanging in the room. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail us, Judson. Sorry.
Well, and
I love it. I absolutely love it.
There's a different intention behind the wooing of Elizabeth to get to young Elizabeth,
Well, and I think there's a desperation in that wooing versus with you. With you, you're a means to an end, right? At that point, Richard is completely in control. Later on in the play, Richard is completely out of control, and he has to have Elizabeth. Like, if he hadn't gotten you, I'm sure he would have come up with another tactic. But if he doesn't get Elizabeth, he's toast. And he's like, men deal unadvisedly sometimes.
It's true.
Last question about some bare bottoms on stage, because I'm just absolutely fascinated.
Yes.
Please tell me you did not inform anyone that you were bare bottoms. Please tell me that this was like a surprise trauma to everyone. Like,
oh yeah. That's how the show started. It's just bare. There was, but this was. There probably would. I can't remember if we had a warning or an advisory before the show that it contained nudity and adult language. If we didn't, it would be something we probably would have now, just because. But we did say it's not a show for children.
Oh, right.
But
that's. I need to do that. I need to make an artistic, creative choice to just show us a bare bottom and maybe like little warning, and then but surprise.
I'll let you in on a little secret. Here, this is stupid. This is a dumb story, and I can't believe I'm about to tell it. But
Tell me.
2 years ago, I played Henry V, and it was at the time was the role that I'd always wanted to play. Wade Newhouse and I were in college, and we took Shakespeare together, and we read it. And he and I both went to see the Branagh movie together and everything. So I got out of college, and I was like, I have to play this role now, like soon. So I did. I was very lucky to play the role. And it was at a point in my life where I was like, oh, I'm an actor. I'm really into this shit, right? So I would show up at the theater 2 hours before curtain. I would strip completely nude and do the entire show by myself in a ghost lit theater. Yes, that is my gift to you. One day I'll tell you what happened when people found out about it, but that's for another time.
But that was when on stage stories too, but none of them are as good as that.
Oh,
that was me thinking. But that was me at the time. I was 20 some years old, and I was like, oh, acting is bearing your soul. You must be, it's like you're being naked in front of the audience. So let me show up early and be. Now I wouldn't do that. But I had a great time when I did. Let's put it that way.
We just got the
young and dumb.
that.
Nothing like a St. Crispin's Day speech when you're standing on a ladder completely nude, like, yes, God for England, Harry.
I'm doing this whole acting gig wrong. I'm doing it completely wrong. I need to change my priorities. Oh,
we're very, very right, Judson.
Yeah, you're doing it right, buddy. Do as I say, not as I do. No, exactly. But I think everybody on this call, would say, everybody on this podcast would say, the goal about being an actor is not being afraid to make a fool of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And if you can get beyond that, no matter how you get beyond it, you become a freer actor. And no matter how much I want to think I'm completely out of my head half the time, there are many a day where I'm sitting there that, we talk about a non-judgmental mind. My judgmental mind comes on a lot and goes,
all the time.
Nope. But when it's not on, it's magic, and you climb over that ladder naked.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was.
Or turn your back on a man who's holding a sword to you.
Right. Yeah.
But whatever. This is a weird example.
Not specific.
Not at all.
I want to give you guys a fair warning. This episode is 100% going to be titled David's Bare Bottom. I just letting you guys know in advance. That's 100% going to happen. So
crazy kids,
right? I came up to watch a production of Richard, and I was able to record it for the streaming for the Patreon folks. And there was I haven't been up to Peace too many times, and so I wasn't very familiar with it and the lingo and stuff. And everyone was closing up shop. I was packing up the gear and all that jazz. Stage manager Elaine, right? Lovely person. Lovely person. She came up to me. She's like, all right, so closing up shop, you just pack up your gear, switch off the light, and make sure you say goodbye to Is it Howie or Howard?
Howie.
She's like, make sure you say goodbye to Howie, or else we have one more show, because it was the Saturday you guys had that final show. Make sure you say goodnight to Howie, because we got to come back here the next day. And so they left. They said goodbye, and I don't know how superstitious I am. I'm like, I'm enough to believe, yeah, it's probably right. But I'm not every time something moves and it's like, oh, that's my grandmother coming to say hi, something like that. And
reference Howie is the
theater.
Right.
The
theater,
yes.
Sorry about that. But yeah, Howie is the real star of the show. And I wanted to ask you guys' perspective, if anything weird, if Howie made an appearance for your show, and how you guys feel about the ghosts and all that in general. And we'll do the same format with David and then across.
I don't no, Howie did not appear to me, although damn it, Howard. I don't know how I feel about it sometimes. Sometimes I want to believe in things like that, and other times I don't. One of the things I do believe in, though, is that what we do as artists and in a theater is we put energy out into a room, right? And we put a lot of energy out into a room. Like when you go see a movie, the energy stops at the camera, so it doesn't ever reach you. Now you can be moved by film and everything, but the human exchange of energy is not occurring. But in theater, it is. And when you've got an audience, the audience absorbs some of it and takes some of it out, but there's a lot of energy that gets left in the room. And I'm not so sure that energy doesn't remain over time. And the room is filled. I mean, the globe, the idea, the concept of the globe, the concept of any of the big Broadway theaters that have been, witness to all of this, that energy remains in that room to a certain degree. And I don't know how it manifests itself or whatever. Theater in the Park here in Raleigh is a haunted theater in the sense that there is an energy there. We used to stay there very late, be 2, 3 in the morning, and literally without thinking, everybody would kind of look at each other and say, "It's time to go." Like the energy in the room would be like, "Get out!" And you would. So,
Wow.
Yeah, I never personally saw Howie the Ghost, but I know a couple cast members do. I know Laura Parker has a great one. I won't tell it in case she wants to share that with the world. But she played Queen Margaret, and I know that Mary Margaret, who played Rivers, also had some great stories about Howie because she was a student at Peace University. Like David, I don't know how much I believe in ghosts, but I there's nothing more full of promise or full of like ominous nature or like full of like just intensity as like an empty theater. You walk in, you're the first one there, and you can just feel like things are going to happen, things have happened here, and I'm so excited to continue this story in any way that I can. And I think that adds to the sense that there may be spirits lurking, there may be friendly or fearful spirits, but I just think it's that potential and that imagination that lends itself to the space that really bolsters that activity. So
yes, so I do have a Howie story. Before I say that though, before I tell my Howie story, I do want to say I believe that theater is one of the most holy experiences that you can partake in as a human, because what we're really doing in theater is sharing the story of humanity with other humans. And the origin of that, at least in Western theater, is religious, right? Like we got started via the Festival of Dionysus, which was a coming together of people to share the experience of being people, right? And I think there's nothing more sacred than that. So I do think that theaters are sacred, holy spaces. And anytime you go into a theater, you get touched by that sacredness, by that holiness. But I will say specifically for Howie, there was every time we would stand, so there was there are 6 of us, 6 characters who Richard kills, who then come back as ghosts in the final scene of the show. And before we made our entrance, we would be standing backstage, and I would always stand in the same spot before entering. And when it would always be about 2 or 3 lines before we're supposed to go on, I would get a shiver. Right. And you know how they say sometimes when you get those shivers, it's like somebody walked over your grave, or like a ghost passed through you. And I am happy to think that was Howie sharing his experience with me and inspiring me to go out and be the best ghost, represented ghost that I could be. So thanks, Howie.
He's like your little coach. He's like your little
made me
soccer
feel great.
mom.
Yeah. He helped me embody the ghostliness, pun fully intended.
I loved asking that question because it just reminded me once again of the spooky season. Okay, super. I was gonna say I almost said the forbidden phrase. Super stoked. My bad. So this is gonna be the last question to wrap up because I know I'm really crunched on the time here. But last question. Once again, same format. I'm gonna ask, what do you guys have planned for the future? Where can people find you? If you have any productions coming up, please tell them. If not, you'll be like, I'm just vibing. We're going to have a nice spooky time, and I'm going to have a nice Christmas time, or whatever you celebrate coming holiday season. Yep.
Oh, okay. So I'm the co-artistic director of Honest Pint Theater in Raleigh. So the next show I'm going to do is Christmas Carol, which I've done for it'll be my 29th year. I love it. It's great. It's an amazing show. I get to do it with some lovely people. And then after that, Honest Pint is going to produce a show I can't announce it yet because we haven't announced it yet, but it is going to be something huge. Not huge in size, but huge in like we've been waiting to do it. And then in April, we're also producing a show called Tiny Beautiful Things, which is based on Cheryl Strayed's book, Tiny Beautiful Things, by from the letters to Dear Sugar. And then we are still in work on a musical that we commissioned called Away Home, which is a story based on a story about Franz Kafka and a doll. And we are going to have a full workshop production of that in June of this year. So those are all, and you can go to honestpinttheater.org and find out all of that information. So that's me.
I'm going to be super boring and say I don't have anything lined up right now. I was going to be directing a production of Alice in Wonderland with Seed Art Share. Unfortunately, that's had to be postponed to the spring. I'm not sure exactly what my commitments will be then, but you should definitely check them out. They're great. They do a lot of childcare within the theater, and they do a lot of educational things. And yeah, they're just great. And two other cast members are also members of Seed Art Share. So go check out Alice in Wonderland in the spring, part of it or not. And yeah, other than that, just gonna see where the wind takes me.
So I'm actually based in Alaska, and I am very fortunate to be back here. I'm booked through the end of the year with a fantastic company called St. Bridget Theater Company. You can look them up on the internet, BSB Theater Company, or I think they're St. Bridget Theater Co.org. I don't know, Google them. We have a very exciting Halloween show coming up. It is going to be called Fireside Tales. It is a found theater or found space production in which we're going to be recounting ghost stories from the golden radio age, which is super exciting. And then they also are doing a holiday show called Holiday Lights, which I will be in. I'm not sure if either of those shows are streaming or not, if you can get streaming tickets to them, but yeah, St. Bridget Theater Company, Omaha, Nebraska. I also am I'm an executive producer, and I direct and star in a web series called Inner Worlds. And we are rolling out our second season. So we're in editing right now. You can look us up. Yes, it's very exciting. Innerworldseries.com. And then I am very, very honored to have been extended an invitation to join Sweet Tea Shakespeare that I have accepted. So I am joining Sweet Tea Shakespeare as a write, and I'm super interested to see what comes out of that. But yeah, so exciting things on the horizon. I also have a website, Jessica N, like nancyjohnson.com. Go on there and check me out. You can get links to Inner Worlds, and I'm hoping, like, I'm redoing my website right now with a wonderful person who is hopefully going to be helping me set up a blog. So I'll have like blogging, however that works. I don't know, but blog opportunities for that. So
yeah. One of us. Oh
no.
I'm gonna provide for listeners, I'm gonna provide in the description all the links, all the websites, and all the other productions that they're saying, talking about any socials or any all that fun stuff. So I'm gonna wrap up today. I'm so glad I was able to gather with you lovely people today to talk about catnip, bare bottoms, and Richard III. So thank you all for joining me. Thank you, listeners, for coming with us, and check us out at sweettshakespeare.com for tickets for our upcoming productions. Look us up on patreon.com/sweetteashakes to catch all the beautiful exclusive content, including but not limited to the pre-recording of Richard III, which should be going up not too long from this recording. Thank you all for joining us today. And tune in next time where we talk about everything Shakespeare, all the teas in the world, and everything sweet in the world. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Be good. Bye.
Bye.